Testing, testing. Oh boy, really got to lean over here. All right. Oh, what? Hand signals. I can. Oh, okay. That's what. Okay. Can you all hear me okay like this? Yes. Okay. I feel like I'm really close. Well, that's fine. All right. Good morning, everyone. Wow, that was a wonderful first session, a great way to start the forum. Dave Inglis is very dynamic and engaging, so it's kind of hard to follow up, but we'll try our best. I do see some familiar faces from yesterday. Just letting you know, I know I told you yesterday, this is the same presentation, so I don't want to waste anyone's time, but if you want to hear it again or you want to provide more feedback or whatever, that is up to you. Just wanted to make that clear so that you're not saying, this is the same thing as yesterday, okay? Just wanted to throw that out there into the atmosphere. My name is Natasha Allen, and I'm the Senior Director for Career and Technical Education at the Illinois Community College Board.
How about that? Can you hear me? Good. I'm Marcy Johnson. I'm the Director for CTE at the Illinois State Board of Education.
All right, so I'm going to take us through the first few slides, and then Marcy and I are both going to tag team the goals slides. And then at the end of the presentation is when we'll ask for some feedback. So we're going to ask you to get up, move around a little bit. For our virtual audience, we will have a Jamboard link provided to you so you can do the same thing just on your computer. So show of hands, how many of you are familiar with Perkins? Okay, so some of you are not, okay. So for those of you who are not familiar with it, there we go. For those of you who are not necessarily familiar with Perkins, Perkins is the most important piece of legislation that affects CTE not only in Illinois, but throughout the United States. It places a really concerted focus on equity, local flexibility, and engaging stakeholders, and also aligning with other federal legislation. So when Perkins was reauthorized, it was done so to be more in alignment with WIOA, with the Every Student Succeeds Act, those types of things. Its purpose really is to develop and integrate the academic knowledge and technical skills. So students getting actual real-world work experience and job skills in their programs, and then taking them into the world to be able to utilize them in their career. All right, so we have Perkins being reauthorized. Great. What does that actually mean for you all? What does that mean for us? So what it meant for us is that we were required to put together a new Perkins state plan. And I made this joke yesterday, but so you're going to hear some recycled jokes, sorry. But so when I say new Perkins state plan, I don't know if we ever were able to locate the old Perkins state plan or if we were ever necessarily required to do so. So it was not only a really good exercise for us, but it's also pretty good to have in the books. What are we going to do with Perkins? How is it going to affect the state? How is it going to affect the communities, the students? And how can we actually see things, the needle moving on all these goals that we have? So putting it all down on paper and putting it out into the atmosphere really makes a huge difference. So when we were doing the state plan, it was quite the to-do. It was a lot of work, which is, both good and bad. But we did so many road shows, listening tours, webinars. We got feedback from so many different stakeholders. It was really great, honestly, to see how much the state came together in so many different capacities to provide feedback, to look at feedback drafts, to really give us feedback that's going to help them at the local level. That's what we want. I mean, we can stand up here as bureaucrats all day long and say what we think is best, but if you don't tell us what's best for you, then we're really not going to know. So, show of hands, how many of you were involved in any sort of feedback or listened to any webinars or anything the first go around? Oh, great. Well, thank you. Okay, so the current state plan that we're under is set to expire at the end of next June. So that means that the federal government wants us to create a new plan. So we got this question yesterday, which I should have brought up at the beginning. So with the new state plan, it's unless you are really changing it completely and putting all new goals, a new vision, new mission, all those types of things, then you would have to submit a whole new state plan. So what we do, we're doing minor changes because I think that most of our goals are still relevant, they're still useful. We just want to hone in on the goals and make actual activities and put those activities forth to you all and say, this is how we're going to meet each of these goals. To not only hold us accountable, but again, to make sure we're actually moving that needle. So that's really our goal with this plan, to make it usable so you can pick it up and look at it and say, oh, okay, yeah, that's what they're going to do, and that's how they're going to do it, and that's when they're going to do it. Instead of reading through a bunch of bureaucratic text. We'll just say that. All right. So we have gathered you all here today because we want to hear from you. We want your feedback. We want to know what you have to say. We want to know, again, what is going to help you at the local level, because that's going to help us and help us inform how we are going to achieve these goals these next 4 years. So what we're going to do next is we are going to go through our goals. We have 6 goals, and for each of the goals, we're going to say the things that we have accomplished over the last 3-4 years. This is not to pat our backs, but this is just a good exercise so you know where we've been and where we're going to go in the future. It was interesting. I said this again yesterday. It was interesting when we were going through, we've had several all-day team meetings to go through the plan and really hone in on the things that we want to update. And it was interesting because when you think about the work that you do, a lot of it's just the day-to-day. You know, you're getting through the day, checking your emails, checking your boxes, and until you look and see, oh, okay, these are our goals, this is what we said we were going to do. Well, we actually really achieved a lot. And then you throw COVID into the mix, and I think just as a state, we did a really good job. So hats off to you all as well. Okay, so you will see that some of these goals we achieved more than others. I'm not really like saying that necessarily, but we were able to focus more on some goals than others. So I think right off the bat, we already kind of know the goals that we want to focus in on, hone in on a little bit more this time around. But I will let Marcy take it from here. She's going to take you through goals 1 through 5, and then I'm going to jump in.
Thank you. One thing I want us to keep in mind is really we've talked about the fact that we really want to dig deeper. You know, we feel like the goals we had were pretty good considering at the time when we thought about this, it was new for us. But, you know, thinking about our strategies may be different. And we welcome your feedback on both, do we need another goal or a different goal than what we currently have? Or let's dig deeper and say, yeah, continue to do this, but as he said earlier, I need you to do this, right? So as you can see, we have the 6. Now, of course, you know, equity is the foundational tenet of our plan. If it is not supporting those students in special population areas and, you know, just others in education and workforce, we don't want that to be, we want that to be the foundation as we think about things. Then our 6 goals are, you know, and a lot of this should be familiar to you. If you're in Perkins, it should sound familiar. And if it's not, then that's our fault for not, you know, addressing a lot of this. But of course, increasing that percentage of individuals in post-secondary certificate degree or industry recognized credentials. You hear us talk about that a lot in either at the community college level or at the secondary level. You know, strengthening that CTE offerings, you're going to see that probably we feel like we spent a bulk of our time in those CTE, you know, making sure that there was more opportunity, more access available for students. The increase in CTE dual credit. If you have heard Dr. Sanders talk, one of his goals is to increase dual credit for students. And so, you know, having this on there makes me feel really good that that was something that we had the foresight for. Increasing the responsiveness for the workforce. We want to work with Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, which they've been part of the work that we've done. We want to work with business and industry, and we feel by having that in our goal keeps that in the forefront. And as we all know, educators, there's a shortage, both at the college level and at the secondary level. And finding a way to recruit and retain those educators and have them be quality CTE educators. We know that when educators come in from the industry, it's not as easy. And so we need to find a way to help support them, because research will show that after 5 years of coming in from industry, they burn out because they didn't get the support that they needed. And then work-based learning. If you didn't know that we were working on work-based learning this year, you're just living under a rock, because we have spent a lot of time on work-based learning and different opportunities. So, so next. So what are our accomplishments and goals? In goal 1, we post-secondary, look at the post-secondary dual credits that we've offered this year. It has really grown and increased. And then we worked on creating a list of industry-recognized credentials and developing that. And, the topic is going to come up because I've been in several meetings lately, like, well, how important is industry credentials? Is it something that we feel like business and industry really want? If so, what is it that they want? And I think having more deeper conversations with business and industry about credentials, I think, is going to be really important. Expanding of the integrated education and training level at the adult ed level has been something they've focused a lot on. And then the transition academy that we've been engaged in. Goal 2, as you can see, like I said, we feel like we've spent a lot of time in that. We've really, both groups have worked on that program of study. We've developed model programs of study over the past 4 years. We have been conducting program of study cohorts and office hours for colleges. We've got grants. We've been doing a lot with different grants, offering opportunities to expand the career and technical education in the schools. And then all the different opportunities for special populations, through the super strategies, through research, through transition work, professional development that we've been offering to continue to engage the community on supporting those special population students. And then the college and career pathway endorsements. Even though that's not particularly CTE, CTE helps support that. It's a bigger, broader piece, but we've done a lot with college and career pathway endorsements. Goal 3, there's the dual credit work. So our dual credit work, as you can see, in 2019, we were at 64,000, and in fiscal year 22, we were up to 75,000. That's good, considering we had COVID in
Unduplicated.
there. Unduplicated. So that's great. It's coming back. It's good.
Yeah. So she asked, is that just CTE or is that all dual credit? So that is just CTE, I believe. No, I think it's all dual credit.
I would say, because that's more than what I think I have. I had about 35,000.
I believe that's all dual credit.
Yeah.
And I can check the resources for that just to make sure. It's the dual credit quality report that our research and policy study staff puts together every year.
Great. Like I said, our model programs of study incorporates dual credit. So we feel that that's important to be part of that model program of study as we talk about the multiple entry and exit points and that transition from secondary to post-secondary. And then we've done a dual credit community of practice as well. Goal 4. This is working with the workforce. And so we've developed some training on the comprehensive local needs assessment. As you all know, workforce has to be part of that needs assessment. If they're not, you're not looking at the needs of your region. We updated the post-secondary and career expectation framework, and it was adopted by all of the state agencies. We implemented those endorsements. We've been working on different pathways and expanding those. We've done some professional development through WIOA and the Forum of Excellence. And then again, our grants have included the fact that workforce needed to be a part of those grants. We didn't want this to be done in a silo. Recruitment and retention of educators. Of course, we've been doing some professional learning with our migrant and bilingual educators. We have the MTSS professional learning workshops. We have the TIPS model, which has grown dramatically through the Community College Board. We've had a pipeline grant. We have the Education Career Pathway grant. We've been doing some new CTE teacher training, Universal Design for Learning, and Equity Academy.
So I do just want to point out, and I'm not just saying this because two of our professional development providers are in the room, but I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that we do not do this by ourselves. We do things well, but we also rely heavily on the experts. So we have our partners for the Office of Community College Research and Leadership, I promise I can say it, here in the room with us, and they have done so much work with our program review initiative, spearheading the training for the Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment. Of course, our wonderful partners at the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support, or ICSPS, who have been instrumental in the TIPS modules, Universal Design for Learning. They're wonderful. And then also our partners at NIU Ed Systems Center, who were really amazing producing the model programs of study. So if you have not checked those out, they're great. All the tools that our professional development providers have created in conjunction with us are wonderful. So thank you and hats off to them.
Well, and I'll add also NIU, the P20 network,
Right, yes,
as well. They've been doing a lot with professional development as well. Okay.
All right, so
This is the
last
work-based
goal.
learning, yes.
You go ahead, Marcia.
No. Okay, so again, expanding that access. So we've, finally developed a new work-based learning manual. We've been doing some professional learning modules. We've created a database to highlight employer champions. We've been increasing our opportunity for collection of data for work-based learning, and we did a scaling of apprenticeships through the CAPIT grant. And of course, the team-based challenges, it's all connected in the work that we've been doing to just increase the opportunities for students to learn more about work-based learning.
All right, so before we get into our interactive component of this presentation, we wanted to wrap up this section with just some notes about funding. So just like at the local level, there are required activities and required ways that you can use your funding, and there are allowable ways and activities that you can use your funding. So at the state level, we have the same thing. So we have required and allowable activities that we can utilize our Perkins leadership funding for. So here on the left, some of the required activities are promoting gender equity, expanding CTE for individuals in state institutions, so correctional centers and then Department of Juvenile Justice, developing a strong CTE teacher pipeline, and you see that that is one of our goals. So providing targeted technical assistance, which I think we've always done pretty well with doing that. And then, of course, conducting continuous quality improvement, so thinking about program review, those types of things. Some of the allowable activities that we're able to use our funding on: open educational resources, enhancing data accountability systems, program of study development. So you'll see the things on this list we've already focused on a lot on a number of these things. But we wanted to provide this list to you because it might help get your juices flowing when you're providing feedback or potential ideas or thoughts or anything like that. So we will now move on to our activity. To quote a wise man who once said, "People do things for their reasons, not for your reasons." So when you're thinking about any ideas, thoughts, feedback of any kind while you're doing this exercise, think about why you're doing it, not why we want you to do it. What's going to help you at your local level move the needle? What's going to help your students? What's going to help your community? Because when we put all that stuff together, that's what's going to help the whole state. So do it for your reasons, not for our reasons. Thanks, Dave Inglis. Okay, so in person, you have little sticky notes at your table. If you don't have any, there should be some near. Please write any thoughts, ideas, feedback, new goal suggestions. Cassie gave us a great new goal suggestion. Go ahead and put the new goal suggestions up here on that little blank sticky note. The stickies in the back are for goals 1 through 6, and they're numbered at the top, and then the goal is also at the top, so you know where to put your sticky note. For those virtual, there is a Jamboard link in the chat. Please feel free to open that up, do the same thing, just only on your computer. So here are some questions to keep in mind. I must have skipped this slide. Did I skip this slide? I don't know. So while you're thinking about, while your juices are flowing, think about these things. So are the goals we set in 2019, are they still relevant? Are they still useful? If not, what would you change? Is there anything that's missing? What specific activities or projects can we complete or facilitate to better achieve these goals? What leadership activities should be prioritized for funding? So that's that list I just shared with you. And if you need me to flip back and forth between these slides at all while you're thinking of things, let me know. And then what supports do you need at your local level to achieve these goals within your institution, for your students, within the community, whatever it may be? And then I'll go ahead, we found it useful to flip back to the goals while people are thinking. And then again, if you want me to flip back and forth between different slides, just let me know. All right? What time is it? It is 11:20. We have until 11:50. That's fine. Yeah. Yeah. Take some time, 15, 20 minutes. You please feel free to talk to one another. Online, for the virtual folks, if you want to communicate with one another in the chat, please feel free. Scoot next to somebody, talk to them. You don't have to just sit there in silence and think about it yourself. Get together. Sometimes we think better when we're talking to others. So. So yesterday we didn't have as much time, so we just read a few. And then we did leave the sticky notes on there from yesterday's session. So if you're like, I have no idea, just feel free to go back there and peruse, browse, and see what others have said. That might spark some thought.
give us information to your students. Correct. It was 2 weeks before the community education center. We could go over do incredible freshman sophomore because it's we got them to back off that statement. We thought that was untrue. But it seemed like this reinforcement, like the reason pushing this, maybe it is from you guys. These are the kind of things that I'm waiting for. Finally, just now this year, last year, and I'm going to do it for which is each skills you were saying, manufacturing for 5-axis programming for the country. But we can start back at school with teachers. Maybe they'll accept your credentials, your kids. Our students in high school are getting their credential for these things, or they're already ASC credential. And then college will not accept those credentials. They're doing credentials for teachers. They invited me to theirs. I invited them to ours. They went to theirs. So, for all of them, I was for it. Students are virtually to go up. And I said, my high school teachers are asking how what the credentials. I know it's not true. Well, that's a part of the Perkins V Where. We're on the advisory board. There were 5 people that were saying, 2 were insurers, 4 Mercy. I'm fine. I got a really one question for you. It has nothing to do with this. Okay. It's been a while since we've talked about area career centers versus regional career centers. Okay. And this is a real general question again. What's the main difference? As far as like, is it a funding thing? Like a lot more money goes to area career centers? So it'd be worth my time to do it.
The regional centers just not recognize their activities for schools and colleges.
Okay.
So apply for the encourage them to engage in some recognition generic career centers, put you into funding.
So is it considerable money? Okay. Well, and again, I don't know why this isn't the right way. Honestly, I mean, this is my 5th year. Something involved or
I don't know, but it was like, so, this is kind of something I want to try. Yes. So just keep that.
And I told my board that I was going to do it. I didn't get it smart, honestly. I just didn't. And now it's like, I see you here, and I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to ask you, like, is it worth my time? Because it looks like it's a lot of work.
It is. I don't understand. You guys are like, so it's like figuring out what you can do to listen. Because since some of those the previous construction, I took that out because, you know, we're not future construction. I've been working on some sort of a PowerPoint, like, okay, this is what they're doing. So I can't.
Well, and when I started, honestly, the first couple years, first I'm just trying to figure out what's going on now. But the only thing I could come back to was we didn't have a physical one building. We didn't have an actual roof over top of our house, but we lease all the space. So we're paying like $35,000, $40,000 a year for a space, which we do have space. We have 5 or 6 classrooms, but then we also share with college and pre high school. We have classes at those places too. We have 15 programs. So
yeah, so it's thinking about what would constitute the recommendation.
okay. So should I be doing anything right now? Wait for you to get back.
I want you to go to the library.
I really appreciate that. All right.
But I am working.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Feel free to go around and do a gallery walk if you haven't already, just to see what others have put up there. And then we will circle back here in a few minutes and just have a conversation.
Correct. So I just wanted to pick your brain. It's like that. For the next 4 years. So when will schools have to submit their next? High school science So we wouldn't necessarily have to make a 4-year plan. The problem is it's a one-on-one class. You didn't want to transfer. Oh, I'm sorry. Now, the other one's like, like two programs for
Right. Yeah, right now, so that would have been
private or public, or American credit testing facilities. Our kids are testing in high school, and they go to programs in universities that are very close to the same credit. So if anybody wants to go get AWS credit for wellness in their certification, they can do a lot of this.
these things aren't come up with things to really need these. You know, so we're just trying to,
One school to put in
you know, it's all very frustrating for me because as I go, during the quarterly seasons too, I see the same.
just like anything else, matriculation, right? First year,
But I feel like it might have been a product of the question.
the principal, just like this year. The next, next couple of years,
So if we started right now talking about what we want to do, and next thing, you basically I still think we've got a position as our skill boss. Trying to do this. It's more about how can we start doing the same thing we've been doing and get money for it. But it requires starting early to really do sit down and think about that, putting something together and just like, that was kind of my question, when can we get started? So you say now.
that's what we're right now. That's why I was on pick your brain on that. So I appreciate your feedback. We're trying to figure it out.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and circle back? I had a great question a minute ago about, well, what about our own state plans? And this should also like get your juices flowing to think about your state plans if you're doing one, because you will have to do a state plan moving forward. I shouldn't say new. Let me rephrase that. You know, you will have to look at your state plan, revise it. And, you know, we were really green back in 2020 when we wrote those plans. And so now's an opportunity for us to think about, we've had 2 needs assessments. You know, how are we working on supporting all the needs of our programs? So do you want me to look at some of the...
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody, before I do that, does anybody have any thoughts, feedback on some of the things that we said already today?
Yeah.
Any comments anybody wants to make?
Anything you want to share? Go ahead.
That's fine. Comments in general. So I was looking at the dates. I believe July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2024. And what screamed out was COVID. And so just in the space that we're in, we tend to want to make progress and move forward, but there are some extenuating factors as a result of COVID that exist. And the experience worldwide negatively impacted a lot of students. And so there are social delays. And I think we need to just incorporate as much as we can activities, experiences, truth, right, about what social delays mean and how that can negatively impact this sort of work, right? Even though we want to see the increases in the strengths, those delays exist. And so we may not get as much quality even from the individual that we would have probably gotten 7 or 8 years ago.
Thank you. You know, and I will add to that is that, of course, we wrote this before the pandemic, like we were finishing it up when the pandemic hit. But we also looked at our performance measures at the secondary level. And we felt the same way. So we even in May asked for them to change our performance levels back down to recognize the fact that, you know, students are struggling and we need to find a way to support them. And let's don't penalize everybody because we're not at 43, but we're at 29. So But thank you for bringing that up.
Just to add to that, so something more tangible to do. So like providing additional supports to students, something like that. Would that make sense? More mental health support. And our partners at ICSPS have been really great with doing webinars on trauma specific to COVID, anxiety, and those types of things. So thank you. It's a great point.
Yeah,
Yes,
to
Bill.
that point, the conversation I was having with a colleague of mine over the last couple of days and just in general is how do we infuse something that doesn't get talked about, in my opinion and my experience, within the CTE world, so to speak, is the way we infuse sense of belonging into the work that we do in the curriculum and for our students, right? General student affairs, higher education programs do a really good job at sense of belonging and making sure our students feel like they are included. But in my experience working with students, we're often relegated to the back of campus where, they're not getting the t-shirts, they're not getting the pens, the pizza parties, those sorts of things. And it goes a long way to make students feel like they're not ostracized and they are a part of a campus community. And how do we do that better for our students?
Yeah, CTE as a whole has, sorry to steal your thunder, Marcy. We face a lot of stigma. I'm still to this day. And I mean, I remember being in high school and, the kids who didn't want to achieve anything were the ones who did all the things that they're making a lot more money than I am now. I guarantee that. So, I mean, just how you overcome that and like trying to chip slowly away at that stigma and who are you going to target? Parents, and we all know these things, but until you really see data and numbers and you're like, wow. But again, it's also exposing children to these types of careers early on. Like yesterday, and you all weren't a part of that, but our director for CTE, Janelle, she was participated in an advanced CTE fellowship, and they showed a wonderful video of her. And at the beginning of the video, she said that CTE was really in her blood and ran in her family, and went through these several examples. Her grandfather didn't have a ton of education, and he came up and lifted himself up through his bootstraps, essentially. Her mom was a CNA, and so she was exposed to that early on in life, and now she's here, and this isn't a job that you necessarily look at a piece of paper and say, hey, that's what I want to do. But just exposing them earlier, because I mean, who knows? If I would have been exposed to welding in 5th grade, maybe I would have been a welder. Maybe not. But, giving students those opportunities. So,
And I really think, in a sense, CTE has a better chance of giving a child a sense of belonging because it's something that they're passionate about and they can feel proud of and successful in because they're doing something and they can see something tangible. Whereas if they're in math and they're not good at math, then they just kind of, right? So, but absolutely. Thank you.
Dave, I quoted you twice already today, so you missed it. Yes, Terry.
I think another topic you brought up
You're
is the supports for students, in that many times it's not the fact that they're failing a CTE class. It's that students that we found in looking at the data is that students are failing a core content class in a math and English course as a freshman year, and then they don't have as much opportunity because they're being forced to go back and retake those courses either in summer school or the following year. So now we're reducing the flexibility we have. So is there a way to use funds, right, to come up with tutors in those sections, because we know we're still supporting CTE in those ways by having kids able to take CTE courses because they have that support to pass their core content courses.
And
I was going to say, and I'm going to challenge the fact that this is where academics and CTE should be combined, where
you're stealing my thunder.
That opportunity, right? Geometry and construction, trig and welding. There's so many different opportunities. There's so much, adding English to that and, writing report, connecting with the academics is huge. And I don't think we're doing a good enough job at that. So, I mean, that helps support a child to say, this is why you're doing it. And it makes more sense to them.
Right. If you're in your class that you enjoy and you're doing math in your class that you enjoy, you don't think of it as you're doing math. You think of it as you're in your class that you enjoy, and that's just part of the course. And so using funds, yes, integrate academics and the CTE together. And I know it's way easier said than done. I completely get that. And Terry and I were just having a conversation. There's so many things that us as bureaucrats at the state level are not privy to. We are not down in the nitty gritty like you all are. So thinking of larger support strategies to try to help you and facilitate discussions and those types of things. So thank you, Terry. Great point.
She's got a.
Hi, mine's on dual credit. And we, for the first time this year, our college decided to start charging kids for career and tech ed dual credit. And we're talking about access. And I think there are some barriers in place that at the high school level, we don't have any control over. One being costs being applied to the students. That is going to limit access. And it's one of our performance measures. And so if my numbers go down this year, I feel like it's a factor beyond our control because if they don't pay first semester, they're not allowing them to enroll in the class next semester, which they'll still hit the unduplicated count. But like what pieces can we put in place to really kind of help students, the key being the student and not the individual entities who are delivering the dual credit?
Good point.
That's a great question. I think situations like that, it's very important to have those wraparound services. So even if they can't be financially compensated, obviously you can't use Perkins funds you can't say, okay, here's a $100 check for you. But finding creative ways to use funds to support them in other ways. So whether it be maybe transportation, if that's a barrier for them, just being creative in that way. I mean, that's one of those questions that's, difficult. And then you think, okay, why was this decision made? And what was the thought process behind that? And who was engaged in the decision when it was being made? So it's a larger issue.
Is it possible to use Perkins funds? Say there is a disease processes class that's offered as dual credit. It aligns with the allied health pathway at the college. Is it possible to say, pay for books for a class that's getting ready to launch as a dual credit class?
Yes, that's possible. Yeah. As long as you are not, we're getting specific here. As long as you can't say, I'm going to pay for your book specifically, unless the student is a special population student, of course. But if you're buying the textbooks for the whole class, that is allowable, yes. It's just part of the course.
Can they keep the books at that point, or do they have to give them back?
So typically we see, and it's interesting because a lot of, at least colleges anywhere, are going to like an online book. And so they each have their own code. And so it's hard to reuse them. So I honestly, I'm not sure what happens in that situation. Since the materials were purchased with Perkins funds, they would have to give them back and have sort of just like a lending library type thing. Or just keep them in the classroom and the next group of students can use them as well. We're getting specific here.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Any other thoughts? Yes, Josh.
So I'm kind of new at all this. I inherited Perkins and dual credit in January, but one of the things that has struck me with dual credit is that the state has a lot of really good guidelines in the Dual Credit Quality Act for transfer and gen ed and whatever. So it's pretty clear what you're supposed to do. There aren't as many good pathways or guidance on how it works for CTE. And so sometimes we end up almost in a situation where we're trying to prevent schools from doing CTE classes as dual credit because we think it doesn't fit or whatever. And I think it would be helpful if somehow somebody could help us clarify good pathways or what it looks like, when students are in a CTE pathway, and what we can approve, and instead of saying, no, that doesn't work, it doesn't fit, it's not on the list or whatever.
That's a great thing. Did you put that on a sticky?
Sort of, yeah.
Sort of. Okay, I have it in my brain. But so if you've never looked at the model Perkins study, within the model programs of study that we created in conjunction with NIU, their list and their priority dual credit and how they fit into the larger pathway. So that might be a good place for you to start. Both of those, so the secondary and post-secondary ones are linked in the slide where we talked about them. I think it was goal number 2, if I'm remembering correctly. But that's a very good point. Thank you. Okay,
Any
we
other-
have only a couple minutes.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, comments?
This has been great. Thank you. Any last minute questions, feedback?
Well, I mean, I guess I would go on to say that as you can tell, we've got feedback. We appreciate that. You know, we're going to synthesize that. We're going to continue to get more feedback as we sit down as a group and decide, you know, the direction we're going to go. We really appreciate your feedback, even verbally today or on the Post-it notes. I think it's just going to help. It helps us realize what's going on in the field and helps us to support you as we move along. Anything you need to add? No. There's our contact information if you think of something later and you want to reach out to us or email us if you have another thought. We appreciate it. So thank you and have a great rest of the conference.
Go forth.